This is 2.
Years with you, a couple of years.
This is 2 Maccabees.
No, I think a couple of months, 4 or 5 months. I was on a video with you.
Well, you're on one right now. This is 2 Maccabees, chapter 10. Now, Maccabees and his followers, the Lord leading them on.
That's right. I forgot about them.
The Lord leading them on recovered the temple and the city, and they tore down the altars which had been built in the public square by the foreigners, and they also destroyed the sacred precincts.
Isn't that a shame?
They purified the sanctuary, and they made another altar of sacrifice. Then, striking fire out of the flint, they offered sacrifices. After a lapse of 2 years, they burned incense and lighted lamps and set out the bread of the presence. And when they had done this, they fell prostrate and besought the Lord that they might never again fall into such misfortunes, but that if they should ever sin, they might be disciplined by him with forbearance, and not to be handed over to blasphemous, barbarous nations. It happened that on the same day on which the sanctuary had been profaned by the foreigners, the purification of the sanctuary took place. That is, on the 25th day of the same month, which was Chislev. And they celebrated it for 8 days with rejoicing in the manner of the Feast of Booths, remembering how not long before, during the Feast of Booths, they had been wandering in the mountains and caves like wild animals. Therefore, bearing ivy wreath wands and beautiful branches also, fronds of palms, they offered hymns of thanksgiving to him who had given success to the purifying of his own holy place. They decreed by public ordinances and vote that the whole nation of the Jews should observe these days every year. Such then was an end of Antiochus, who was called Epiphanes. And now we will tell what took place under Antiochus Eupator, who was the son of that ungodly man. And we will give a brief summary of the principal calamities of the wars. This man, when he succeeded to the kingdom, appointed one Lysias to have charge of the government and to be the chief governor of Cold Syria and Phoenicia. Ptolemy, who was called Macron, took and led in showing justice to the Jews because of the wrong that had been done to them, and attempted to maintain peaceful relations with them. As a result, he was accused before Eupator by king's friends. He heard himself called a traitor at every turn because he had abandoned Cyprus and Philometor and entrusted to him, and had gone over to Antiochus Epiphanes. Unable to command respect due to his office, he took poison and ended his own life. When Gorgias became the governor of the region, he maintained a force of mercenaries, and at every turn kept on warring against the Jews. Besides this, the Idumeans, who had control of the important strongholds, were harassing the Jews. They received those who were banished from Jerusalem and endeavored to keep up the war. But Maccabees and his men, after making a solemn supplication and beseeching God to fight on their side, rushed to the strongholds of the Idumeans, attacking them vigorously. They gained possession of the places and beat off all who fought upon the wall, and slew those whom they encountered, killing no fewer than 20,000. When no less than 9,000 took refuge in 2 very strong towers, well equipped to withstand a siege, Maccabeus left Simon and Joseph, and also Zacchaeus and his men, and a force sufficient to besiege them, and he himself set off for places where he was more urgently needed. But the men with Simon, who were money hungry, were bribed by some of those who were in the towers, and on receiving 70,000 drachmas, let some of them slip away. When word of what had happened came to Maccabeus, he gathered the leaders of the people and accursed these men of having sold their brethren for money by setting their enemies free to fight against them. He then slew these men who had turned traitor, and immediately captured the 2 towers. Having success at arms and everything undertook, he destroyed more than 20,000 in 2 strongholds. Now Timothy...
can you imagine that happening?
Timothy, who had been defeated by the Jews before, gathered a tremendous force of mercenaries and collected the cavalry from Asia in no small number. He came on intending to take Judea by storm, As he drew near, Maccabees and his men sprinkled dust upon their heads and grinded their loins with sackcloth in supplication to God, falling upon the steps before the altar. And he besought him to be gracious to them and to be an enemy to their enemies and an adversary to their adversaries, as the law declares. And rising from their power, they took up their arms and advanced a considerable distance from the city. And when they came near to the enemy, they halted. Just as dawn was breaking, the two armies joined battle, the one having as a pledge of success and victory not only their valor, but their reliance upon the Lord, while the other made rage their leader in the fight. When the battle became fierce, there appeared to the enemy from heaven 5 resplendent men on horses with golden bridles, and they were leading the Jews. Surrounding Maccabeus and protecting him with their own armor and weapons, they kept him from being wounded, and they showered arrows and thunderbolts upon the enemy, so that, confused and blinded, they were thrown into disorder and cut into pieces. 20,500 were slaughtered, besides the 600 horsemen. Timothy fled to a stronghold called Gazara, especially well garrisoned, where the Charias was commander. Then Maccabeus and his men were glad, and they besieged the fort for 4 days. The men within, relying on the strength of the place, blasphemed terribly and hurled out wicked words. But at the dawn of the 5th day, 20 young men in the army of Maccabees, filled with anger because of the blasphemies, bravely stormed the wall with savage fury and cut down everyone they met. Others who came up in the same way wheeled around against the defenders and set fire to the towers. They kindled fires and burned the blasphemers alive. Others broke open the gates and let in the rest of the force, and they occupied the city. They killed Timothy, who was hidden in a cistern, and his brother Chaldeus and Apollophanes. And when they had accomplished these things, they gave hymns of thanksgiving, and they blessed the Lord, who shows great kindness to Israel and gives them the victory. Very soon after this. And that's all. So that was it. That was the Maccabees. That was it. Now, that's a good Veterans Day reading, I guess.